Hello and good morning, O'Neill. I hope everyone's having an amazing day. I hope you had a fabulous 3-day weekend and a very happy Valentine's Day. I know it was nice to have that extra day with family. This week, we have another awesome, exciting week of learning at O'Neill. We have our kindergarten through third here on Tuesday and Wednesday, and our fourth through sixth here on Thursday and Friday, and our amazing IOP class here Tuesday through Friday. So it's going to be an awesome week. And I hope that you're able to have time to reflect and have discussions with your class about Black History Month. Really, we should be learning about Black history every day and not just during this month. Also, Hispanic history, women's history, and everything else that makes us a very special and amazing school. And I want to hear what you have to say about our school. Share the love on Flipgrid and tell us what you love about O'Neill Elementary. We're going to be sharing that with Tony Sanders, our superintendent, as well as other cabinet members on February 23rd. So let us know how we're doing. All right. Well, another great day, another great book that I want to share with you. It is Take a Picture of Me, James Vander Zee. What a cool last name. I mean, that's awesome. Vander Zee. I love it. And what's really cool about this famous Black artist is that he is a photographer. I love photography. That is one of the, outlets, creative outlets that I have. I love taking pictures of nature and my family. And so when I heard about James Vander Zee, I was like, I want to know all about him. And so this story, Take a Picture of Me, James Vander Zee by Andrea J. Looney, will hopefully let you know a little bit more about him too. So let's get started. Deep in the heart of Lenox, Massachusetts, in a white frame house nestled between his aunt's home and his grandparents' house, lived a boy named James Vander Zee. James was the oldest boy of 3 sons and 2 daughters. At the Vander Zees, the children learned about music and art, and kindness too. Sounds like what we do at O'Neill. James played the violin and piano. He also liked to paint. But drawing people was hard. He could never get their expressions right. James wanted to share the beauty he saw in his heart. I can connect with that too. I'm not so great at drawing, but I love the photography. So let's hear more. One day, a man came to the Vander Zee home with a huge contraption called a camera. It was the only camera in Lenox. Click, boom. The man took the family's picture and left. Later, he returned with a photograph that perfectly captured everyone's smile and their mother's sweet gaze. Now this is how to make great pictures, thought James. I want a camera. So now you just take a picture on your phone and boom, it's there and you can email it and send it off and whatever. Back then, you had to sit for the camera for so long and then it had to go get produced and everything like that. It took a really, really long time to get your image. So technology has come a long way. In a magazine, James found a contest where the first prize was a camera. To win, he had to sell the most sachets of ladies' perfume. After months of selling sachets, James won. He won! But the camera came in parts, and the parts didn't fit together. So James had to start all over again. He weeded his neighbor's garden for a quarter a day until he saved $5. And then James was the second person in Lenox to own a camera. Yeah, you just don't get an iPhone from your mom and dad. You got to work for it a little bit. Fold some laundry. Anyway. First, James took pictures of his family, then his classmates. Soon, people all over town were saying, take a picture of me, James Van Der Zee. At home, James turned his closet into a dark room. He learned how to develop film. It wasn't easy to create photographs, but James loved his family. He loved his town and the people in it. So he always worked to make them look their best. So to develop film, you had to have all these different chemicals and special paper, and the room had to be dark. And so you might have a little red light, and that's how you developed film. So it took a long time. Far away from Lenox, the world was changing. Many Black families were leaving the segregated South to start new lives in the big northern towns like New York City. James was ready for an adventure. At the age of 18, he took his camera and he moved to Harlem. Woo-hoo! Compared to Lenox, Harlem was big, fast, and exciting. James had to hold on to his hat to keep his head from spinning. That's sometimes how I feel when I go to downtown Chicago. Woo-hoo! So much going on. After working as a pianist, a waiter, and an elevator operator, James finally got a job as an assistant photographer at a portrait studio in New Jersey. Many big city customers came to have their portraits taken. James couldn't wait to take their photographs, but his boss sent him straight to the darkroom. He said customers would not want their portraits taken by a Black man. James did not like the way his boss took portraits. His boss shot the photographs too quickly. Sometimes the customers weren't even ready. In the darkroom, James worked hard to make everyone look their best. One day, his boss left for vacation and put James in charge of the shop. James promised to take care of the business, but in his own way. Instead of rushing the customers, James talked to them. He found their natural smiles and the perfect backgrounds. James treated the customers like family. In the darkroom, James made their pictures look even better. He brightened people's eyes, straightened their teeth, and fixed their hair. He saw what was special in everyone and captured each person's story on film. So now you just click on a thing and there's like a filter that like takes away wrinkles or gives you cat ears or something like that. It took a long time in the dark room to create that. And a lot of talent. When James' boss returned, he found a line of customers saying, "Take a picture of me, James Van Der Zee." So James went back to New York and opened his very own portrait studio in Harlem, where the neighborhood was jumping with brand new music, art, books, and glamour. This cultural celebration is called the Harlem Renaissance. Just about everyone, politicians like Marcus Garvey, athletes like Joe Louis and the New York Black Yankees, and world-famous performers like Florence Mills, Big Bill Bojangles Robinson, and Mamie Smith wanted fancy portraits taken by James Van Der Zee. James photographed the rich and the poor, but mostly the middle class, and this distinguished him from many other photographers. At the time, photographs of Black people were often sad and grim descriptions of poor farm workers or struggling city dwellers. But when James stepped behind the camera, click, boom, everything changed. So this is a drawing of the picture that's part of our famous Black artists presentation. I thought this one was just spectacular, how elegant they looked in it. And I love that James Vanderzee took it. James used beautiful backgrounds, fancy props, and elegant clothing to help the people of his neighborhood look their best. In the darkroom, he fixed photos and combined images to create perfect portraits. Even James' street photography captured the pride, beauty, and joy of Harlem. People all over the world proudly displayed James' photos in their homes, in their businesses, and close to their hearts. But the world was changing again. Cameras were now smaller and cheaper. People could take their own photographs. Soon customers stopped coming to James Vanderzee's studio. You can just drop it off at Walgreens and get it filled. James tried to keep working. He took passport photos, shooting tiny portraits that helped send folks on faraway adventures. Eventually, though, James had no choice but to put away his camera. Instead, he fixed up old photographs sent to him by people from around the world. Several years later, a visitor arrived at James' studio. The Metropolitan Museum of Art needed photographs for an exhibit on the history of Harlem. They found thousands of photos showing thousands of Harlem residents, all taken by James Vanderzee. The exhibit was called Harlem on My Mind, and James' work was a huge hit. People said it was like walking through 40 years of history of Harlem. The photographs showed the Harlem of families and churches, friends and clubs, neighborhoods and celebrities, the Harlem of love, pride, and community, the Harlem that James Vanderzee always saw in his heart. And people came to say, "Take a picture of me, James Vanderzee." So James stepped behind the camera once again. Click, click. And this is a picture of the book we read, the artist from the book that we read of Jean-Michel Basquiat. He took his famous picture. It's all connected. So here's just a little bit more. And there's that beautiful picture I love with that fancy car and those fancy fur coats. So cool. And this kind of shows a little bit of like how they used to do touch-ups on pictures, you know, before all those touch-ups and then after. Now it's just a quick little filter, but they had to work so hard in dark rooms to make that happen. So that's super, super interesting. That James Vanderzee was one of the first people to do that in photographs. And just some extra beautiful pictures that he took. So fun. And so there you go. That is a little bit more about the famous photographer James Vanderzee with the coolest last name. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you have another fabulous week of learning. And remember to log in and learn every single day at 8:30. Make sure that you have your cameras on, that you're participating, you're turning in your work, because your teachers want to see you. That's how they know that you are learning. Well, I hope you have a fantastic week and a marvelous Monday.